I once measured time by the things Nathan overlooked. Our anniversary, the way I preferred my coffee, how much I disliked silence during meals. Somewhere between our marriage vows and his third job promotion, he'd stopped seeing me as important. We were married, yes, but in a way that suggested to outsiders we were just sharing a living space. I didn't hate him, I simply longed to be noticed. Thursday evenings were indistinct, much like the others. Nathan sat at the kitchen island, focused on his laptop screen, his fork tapping against his plate, punctuation for an unspoken exchange. I inquired about his day. He responded with a mumbled fine. I shared details of mine. He nodded, his gaze never leaving his screen. As I carried my plate to the sink, Cassie's name appeared on my phone. Cassie, my closest friend since university and the last link to who I once was. I stepped into the hall, answering softly, "Hey. You sound exhausted." "Robot husband at it again?" she joked lightly. I didn't answer. "Oh my God, Alyssa, I'm taking you out tonight." "No excuses, forget the loungewear. We're going to Lucent, the club." I chuckled. "Cass, I haven't gone clubbing in ages." "Exactly. It's time. Get your lipstick on." I won't take no for an answer. I glanced towards Nathan. He hadn't even registered my absence. "I'll pick you up at 10, she stated before ending the call. 10 p.m. arrived more quickly than I anticipated. Cassie was at my door in a bold red dress. I hesitated in a black bodycon dress that felt too tight and revealed too much of a person I hadn't embodied in years. "You look absolutely stunning," Cassie grinned, in the best possible way. Lucent throbbed with energy. Strobe lights crisscrossed the ceiling. Music pulsed through me, and I felt a part of my former self awaken, the woman who danced purely for the love of the rhythm, not to escape her thoughts. Cassie vanished into the crowd, instantly surrounded by eager strangers. I made my way to the bar, ordered a drink, and found a seat. For a while, I simply observed, young women laughing, couples embracing, men surveying the room like predators in tailored suits. Then my eyes landed on him. He leaned against the bar, holding a glass of amber liquid, dressed in a navy button-down with sleeves casually rolled up, showing a watch that wasn't ostentatious. He wasn't flashy or loud, just composed, like someone who didn't need to seek attention because it naturally gravitated towards him. Our eyes met, not a prolonged gaze, just a brief moment. He smiled, not like someone ready with a pickup line, but with quiet amusement at the scene around him. I looked away. Moments later, he was beside me. Present, but not intrusive. "Busy night," he remarked, his voice calm and rich like aged whiskey. "Guess everyone needs to get away," I replied. He extended his hand. "Ethan. Alyssa." We lightly touched glasses. For that instant, we were just two unknown people in a corner of a brightly lit world that didn't care who we were. "You don't seem like a regular here," he observed. "Do I appear that uncomfortable?" "No," he smiled. "You look like you're relearning how to breathe." That sounds like a practiced line. It wasn't. Maybe because it was true. We talked about music, about how the city is always awake, but people like us live lives that feel both too full and too empty. I mentioned I used to paint. He shared that he was an architect but kept a sketchbook for ideas that emerged in his dreams. He didn't ask probing questions but listened as if everything I said held significance. I lost track of time. I forgot about Cassie. I forgot about Nathan. At one point, he leaned in and asked, "Can I get you another drink?" I hesitated. The invisible boundary between simple conversation and its potential consequences hung between us. "I probably shouldn't," I murmured. "But you want to," he stated, not as a question, but an observation. I looked at the glass in my hand, then back at him. I didn't speak, but I didn't leave. Outside, a summer breeze moved through the alley next to Lucent. I needed fresh air. I needed distance. Yet, when I stepped outside, I sensed him behind me, not too close, just near enough to wait, and I allowed it. We didn't speak at first. The air outside the club carried the scent of smoke and inexpensive perfume, but I welcomed the clarity. The music still pulsed from inside, like a heartbeat I was trying to ignore. Ethan stood a few feet away, giving me space. He didn't ask what I was thinking. He didn't need to. Too loud? He asked after a minute, his voice low. Too much, I replied. But perhaps that's the intention, he nodded, then gestured towards the street. There's a hotel bar a block away. Quiet. Good drinks. No pressure. No pressure, I repeated, more to myself than to him. I could have declined. I should have. Instead, I followed. The walk was brief, just long enough for me to justify my actions and then forget why I felt the need to. The hotel was tall and discreet, sleek glass and marble, refined but not flashy. It seemed like the kind of place built for secrets. Inside, the bar was dimly lit, sophisticated, quiet. A gentle jazz tune played from hidden speakers. We found a corner booth, enveloped by leather seats and soft shadows. He ordered drinks for us. I didn't ask what they were, it didn't matter. So, he began, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. What brought you out tonight? I paused, surprised he hadn't asked sooner. My best friend dragged me out, I confessed. She said I was starting to fade away. And are you? He asked, his eyes studying me over the rim of his glass. Sometimes, I admitted. He nodded again, not pressing, just listening. And you? What's your reason? He offered a slight smile. I just needed to feel something. Anything. We didn't make a toast. We didn't flirt. The quiet atmosphere wasn't suited for games. We simply sat there, two solitary individuals tending to unacknowledged hurts. Somewhere between the second sip and the second drink, I stopped remembering I was married. Not because I didn't care, but because for the first time in what felt like years, someone was looking at me as if I mattered. I should have left. I knew it. Instead, I asked him, "Do you always speak to strangers like this?" Only the ones who look like they've forgotten what it feels like to be touched. The words were gentle, but they resonated. I looked away, blinking hard. My fingers rested near his on the table. He didn't move. Neither did I. And then he asked the question I hadn't expected, "Are you happy?" A pause. Then another. "I'm married," I replied. That's not what I asked. I couldn't answer, because if I did, I would have had to speak the truth. And the truth was, I no longer knew. He leaned in closer, just enough that I could feel his warmth, but without being invasive. "We don't have to go upstairs," he said softly. "This can end right here." I searched his face for judgment, for arrogance, for anything that would make leaving easier. But I saw only understanding, not impatience. "No," I said, surprising myself. "Let's just go somewhere quieter." The elevator ride was silent. I watched the floor numbers light up, like seconds I could never recover. When the doors opened, I followed him into a room that smelled faintly of cedar and clean linen. He closed the door behind me but didn't immediately touch me. Not yet. I turned to face him. There was no turning back now. But the ache wasn't merely physical. It was the ache of being overlooked for too long, the ache of wanting to feel desired. When he kissed me, it wasn't rushed or desperate. It was gentle. It was the kind of kiss that poses a question and patiently awaits the response, in the subtle lean-in, the catch in your breath, the slight tremble in your hands before they reach out. Our clothes didn't come off all at once. It wasn't like a scene from a movie. It was slow, almost reverent, filled with pauses that silently asked, "Are you certain?" And my body continued to say yes, even as my heart silently screamed a warning. It was a night wrapped in hushed tones and soft light, where guilt lingered at the edge of every breath but never fully entered the space. When it was over, neither of us spoke. We lay there, entwined in silence, not lovers, not strangers, simply two wounded souls who had found solace in each other's presence for a single night. And even then, I understood that everything had irrevocably changed. The morning light filtered through sheer curtains, casting delicate patterns across the hotel sheets. I lay still, listening to my own breathing, pretending it belonged to someone else. Ethan was beside me, half asleep, his chest rising and falling in calm, steady rhythms. I stared at the ceiling, wondering how something so intimate could also feel so detached. I didn't regret the night, not in the way I had expected to. But I didn't feel relieved either. Just a peculiar emptiness, as if I had opened a door that could not be closed. Ethan stirred and turned towards me, gently brushing hair from my cheek with a tenderness that seemed too deep for someone I had only just met. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded, uncertain if it was true. He didn't ask me to stay. He didn't ask for anything more. He simply looked at me for a long moment, then said, "You deserve to feel wanted." I didn't reply, not because I disagreed, but because hearing those words aloud made it harder to ignore how lost I had allowed myself to become. I got dressed in silence, each movement deliberate, as if folding myself back into a version of myself that no longer existed. As I reached for the door, Ethan said softly, "Take care, Alyssa." And that was all. A sigh. The city was awake. People were walking dogs, carrying coffee cups, talking on their phones. The world continued its spin, completely unaware that my own equilibrium had shifted. When I walked into our apartment, Nathan was at the kitchen table, typing on his laptop with the same focused detachment he had displayed for years. He didn't look up or ask where I had been. "Hey," I said. "Morning," he replied. I waited for more, but there was nothing. Just the clicking of keys, cooling coffee, and the growing ache in my chest. I showered for a long time, letting the water run over my skin as if it could wash away what I had done. But nothing could erase the memory of being truly seen. That night, Nathan rolled over in bed and fell asleep with his back to me, just as he always did. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, tracing invisible lines in the plaster as if they might reveal answers. I hadn't cheated out of malice or indifference. I had cheated because I was profoundly lonely, because I had silently pleaded to be noticed, touched, chosen, and eventually stopped believing it would ever happen. In the days that followed, I didn't contact Ethan. He didn't contact me. Whatever we shared remained in that single night, suspended in time like a frozen breath in winter air. But something inside me had fundamentally changed. I started waking up earlier, not for Nathan, but for myself. I retrieved my old sketch pad from the back of the closet and began to draw again, hesitant lines at first, then bolder strokes with each passing day. I scheduled therapy under a name Nathan wouldn't recognize and sat across from a stranger who asked questions no one else had thought to. I didn't tell anyone what had happened, not Cassie, not my therapist, and certainly not Nathan. The confession lived in the slight pause when I looked at him, wondering how two people could share a home but not a connection. One evening, while he was working late again, I stood by the window, watching the city lights flicker on one by one. I thought about the woman I used to be, the one who waited, hoped, settled. I thought about Ethan's eyes in the darkness, the way his voice filled empty spaces without promising permanence. I didn't know what the future held. I didn't know if my marriage could be saved or if I even desired to save it. What I did know was this: I had crossed a boundary, yes, but in doing so, I had rediscovered a part of myself I believed was long gone. Infidelity doesn't always start in the physical act. Sometimes it begins in the silence, in the neglected corners of the heart, where longing has resided for too long. I had broken my promises. But somewhere within that act of betrayal, I found the courage to stop betraying myself.